We're following developing news out of Texas where a manhunt is underway for a suspect who shot and killed a deputy. This happened at a Dollar Tree in Houston today as the deputy was trying to serve a warrant on a repeat offender. Authorities identified the suspect as 56-year-old Robert Lee Davis, who also goes by the name Sean Christopher Davis. He's a black male, 5'10" and 200 pounds, and was last seen wearing a blue Nike hoodie, blue jeans, and blue shoes. Authorities identified the deputy as Jesus Jesse Vargas, a 17-year veteran of the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office. Anyone with information about the suspect's whereabouts is asked to call the Houston Police Department or Crime Stoppers. And prosecutors say they are in talks about a potential plea deal with alleged Mexican cartel kingpin Ishmael El Mayo Zambada. Zambada appeared in court today and waived any conflict of interest that could stem from that. Prosecutors believe the younger Zambada could testify against his father if he went to trial on drug trafficking charges. His son previously testified against Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who allegedly co-founded the Sinaloa cartel. With El Mayo, according to a U.S. attorney, the plea talks with Zambada have not borne fruit so far, but prosecutors would like to keep trying. A judge has scheduled a hearing for an update on April 22nd. The NYPD announces a new policy in an effort to reduce high-speed chases. It stops police from being able to pursue suspects for traffic infractions, violations, or nonviolent misdemeanors. The new policy doesn't exactly say when a chase is warranted, just that it should be terminated whenever the risks to uninformed officers and the public outweigh the danger to the community. Now, police pursuits reportedly jumped nearly 600% during the first month of 2023. The state saw more than 2,200 chases last year, 25% of which resulted in some sort of collision or property damage. The change will take effect February 1st. SpaceX files a federal suit against the California Coastal Commission, with Elon Musk's company alleging discrimination over political beliefs. Now, according to court filings released today, SpaceX is alleging the commission acted with bias in an October meeting when they denied expanding the rocket launch schedule. Members on the commission reportedly discussed how they viewed Musk's support of President Trump very negatively. Federal lawmakers from California have introduced legislation to strip the commission of certain powers to prevent similar incidents in the future. Virginia's Democrat-led House of Delegates passes resolutions concerning voting access, marriage equality, and abortion access. Here's One America's McKenna Blackman with that.
The Virginia House of Delegates passes resolutions that seek to protect abortion access, restore the vote to convicted felons, and enshrine marriage equality as Democrats look to amend the state constitution by 2026. The Democrat-led House advanced 3 proposed constitutional amendments on Tuesday, along with sister measures which are now making their way through the state Senate. If the proposed abortion measure is successful, Virginia will go on to join a number of states that are looking to put access to the procedure on the ballot. State Delegate Mark Early Jr. described the measure as extreme, even compared to elsewhere in the country.
This is among the most extreme and ideologically driven constitutional amendments among any that have been proposed in the nation.
Additionally, state lawmakers also voted 55-44 to make changes to the state's process in restoring voting rights for those who serve time in prison for felony crimes. This comes after Governor Glenn Youngkin rolled back the process, making Virginia the only state that permanently banned convicted felons from voting until such rights are restored to the person by the governor.
The right to vote is fundamental, and the amendment ensures that if a person has served their time, they deserve to have their right to participate in democracy restored.
Meantime, Virginia's marriage equality resolution garnered the most bipartisan support after lawmakers voted 58-35. While proposed constitutional amendments are not subject to veto by the governor, they must pass twice within 2 years before being voted upon by the public. McKenna Blackman, One American News.
New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy promises to stockpile abortion pills in the state as President-elect Trump is set to take over in Washington, D.C. During his State of the State address in Trenton on Tuesday, the Democrat said that reproductive rights are under attack nationwide, and New Jersey needs to be a safe haven. He also said that with pro-life Republicans taking over Congress's majorities, Garden staters need to have their so-called rights protected.
Additionally, and in light of the anti-choice policies supported by the current majorities in Congress. Today, I am also announcing that New Jersey will begin stockpiling a supply of mifepristone so every woman can access this crucial form of reproductive care.
Governor Murphy has said that he will work with Trump on issues where they align, but he must protect his residents where they don't. Still to come on One American News, Denmark's prime minister says Trump must negotiate with Greenland directly about buying the territory. More on Trump's plan to take over Greenland. Plus, the Biden administration is sounding the alarm on advanced bioweapons being developed by America's enemies. How it's trying to combat the emerging threats. Up ahead. To international headlines, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said it's up to Greenland if they want to join the U.S. Frederiksen spoke with President Trump today, saying he will have to negotiate directly with Greenland if he wants to annex the island or if they want to be an independent country. This comes as Greenland's leader said his island's independence is not up for sale. However, this hasn't deterred Trump from threatening to use military force to take Greenland. And the U.S. Department of Commerce issues new restrictions on the export of certain biotechnology, particularly to China and other global rivals. The new standards released today restrict technology which could be used to strengthen military capabilities and help design new weapons with the use of AI. The restricted equipment can reportedly be used to generate high-quality biological data, which could be used in the development of biological weapons. Now, South Korean authorities are likely to seek a warrant to extend the detention of impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. Diane 2 has more.
South Korea's Yoon Suk-yeol was arrested on Wednesday in relation to a criminal insurrection investigation. The impeached president says he was only cooperating with what he called an illegal probe to avoid bloodshed. Here's what's expected to unfold in the coming days. Yoon has been taken to the offices of the CIO, or Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. The agency is leading the investigation into Yoon's role in declaring martial law on December the 3rd. But it does not have the authority to prosecute the president. The interrogation facilities include a newly created rest area with a sofa to accommodate Yoon, Yonhap News Agency reported. The CIO prepared a questionnaire of more than 200 pages for Yoon. However, a CIO official said Yoon is refusing to talk and has not agreed to have interviews with investigators recorded on video. Authorities have 48 hours to question Yoon. After that time frame, they must seek a warrant to detain him for up to 20 days or release him. 2 of the CIO's 4 investigative divisions currently have no staff, and just 9 prosecutors and the deputy head are handling Yoon's case. That magnified questions over whether the agency has the capacity to successfully build a case against Yoon. While in custody, Yoon is expected to be held in the Seoul Detention Center when he's not being questioned. Other high-profile figures, including former President Park Geun-hye and Samsung Electronics chairman J.Y. Lee, have previously spent time there. The embattled leader will probably be assigned a solitary cell, according to precedent and due to his status. His cell is likely bigger and better appointed than the standard 71 square feet single cells.
Iran's president says that his country has never intended to assassinate President Trump. During a recent interview, Masoud Pezeshkian denied his country has ever plotted an assassination attempt against the incoming president. He claimed Iran has never been for assassinations and terrorism.
Iran has never been in pursuit of assassination and acts of terror.
You're saying there was never an Iranian plot to kill Donald Trump?
Never, by no means.
Are you willing to promise that there will be no attempt on the life of Donald Trump?
Ever since the beginning, we never intended to do that.
This comes after the U.S. Department of Justice filed charges against an Iranian national for threatening to murder Trump. While in 2021, the Iranian government was threatening the president and his former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. And the Iranian government has given direct funding to Hamas and Hezbollah terrorist groups. The Genesis Prize Foundation says Argentine President Javier Milei will receive the Jewish Nobel Prize, which comes with a cash prize of $1 million. They made that announcement in a statement on Tuesday praising Milei for promising to move their embassy to Jerusalem, as well as advocating for Israel at the UN. Stan Polovitz, co-founder and chairman of the foundation, said Milei has been one of the strongest supporters for the Jewish people and the state of Israel on the world stage. Milei said he was honored to receive the award and will use the money to fight anti-Semitism in Argentina and around the world. Still to come on One American News, Vivek Ramaswamy is reportedly being considered as J.D. Vance's replacement. Why Trump wants him in the upper chamber. Plus, Ron DeSantis ramps up his efforts to protect Floridians against illegal migrants. How he's trying to help Trump carry out mass deportations after the break. Thank you so much for keeping it right here on One America News. I'm Katie Smith. President Trump throws his support behind Vivek Ramaswamy to replace J.D. Vance in the Senate. That's according to reports today, which say Trump wants his former rival to serve alongside Bernie Moreno in the upper chamber. Ramaswamy reportedly did not want to replace Vance as Trump tapped him to co-chair the Department of Government Efficiency. However, the reports say Ramaswamy is seeking a permanent government job after conservatives criticized him for his comment on H-1B visas. Governor Mike DeWine met with Ramaswamy about potentially becoming Ohio's junior senator.
Back to order.
I get bilingual protests, which is, I think, is an entry cool.
As you know, that's a first here for us.
At least 15 people are arrested following protests during 2 confirmation hearings on Capitol Hill. 5 people have been charged with crowding, obstruction, and incommoding today after disrupting Senator Marco Rubio's confirmation hearing to become Secretary of State. Another 10 climate protesters were charged for doing the same during the hearing for Energy Secretary nominee Chris Wright. Take a look.
Energy has been a lifelong passion of mine, and I to better lives.
Is here. LA is burning. It is because of fossil fuel companies and big oil billionaires.
The committee will stand in recess until the Capitol Police can restore order in the committee.
The entire Senate cannot vote on the confirmation until after Trump's inauguration. A new poll from Rasmussen Reports shows that Americans not only widely approve of President-elect Donald Trump's transition process, but also his policy ideas. One America's Daniel Baldwin has more.
We're less than a week away from President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, and new polling data from Rasmussen Reports shows that Republican voters strongly back the president-elect's agenda, including purchasing Greenland and taking back the Panama Canal. Rasmussen Reports found that 70% of Republicans back Trump buying Greenland, while 73% support resuming autonomy over the Panama Canal. Mark Mitchell is the top pollster for Rasmussen. He joins us now. Sir, these are overwhelming numbers. How should we interpret these findings from what you discovered in this poll?
Time and time again, all the numbers say that no matter what the electoral results were in November, Trump has a mandate, not just because he won the popular vote by, I think, a margin larger than what the actual final official numbers were, but because every single component, every single thing he talks about becomes popular. And, you know, a month and a half ago, we were polling on no-brainers like, do people support mass deportations? And believe it or not, yes, of course they do, in the 60s, including over 80% of Republicans. So now it's like, let's pick a few more esoteric things, you know, the kinds of things that the gaslighters in the corporate media look with at utter horror. How could he say that? How could he imply that we could invade Panama or somehow purchase Greenland? But President-elect Donald Trump has suggested the United States should acquire Greenland as purchase in our national interest. Do you support or oppose? And all likely voters, it's, 44%. That ain't bad. And oppose is only 45%. So that's basically a wash. 11% are not sure. The point here is, and the point for the establishment Republicans, is that Republican voters overwhelmingly back this, 70% to only 17%. That's massive. The Republican Party is the party of Donald Trump and MAGA, and they've said it out of their own mouths. And Panama has even more support. So it's like, give us something even crazier to poll on, and I'm pretty sure we're going to get a strong majority.
What does this general point highlight, not only about the GOP, but Americans? How do they view the president-elect in his transition as he heads into this second term?
Well, his transition is viewed very favorably, and I think that reflects that he's gained people's confidence over the last 8 years. He's been tested in many ways, and he's held up to the scrutiny. And right now, we ask, how do you approve of the way that Trump is handling his presidential transition? The number is 54%. Biden's got a 43% approval rating today. Donald Trump would have a 53%, I'm guessing, if we tested it. He took 50% of the vote. So for him to get 54% on his presidential transition, people are not looking at Hexas scandals. People are not looking at Matt Gaetz or, John Thune, any of this stuff. They're like, we elected Trump. He's going to come in and clean house. Only 42% of voters disapprove. Only 32% strongly disapprove of his transition. His favorability numbers, very unfavorable, is usually like 39 or 40. So there are a lot of people giving him benefit of the doubt. He's got 25% approval from Democrats on his transition and 87% among Republicans. And listen, Republicans are not uniformly MAGA. There's usually the 20% holdouts that will support Nikki Haley, or the 25% who do say that J6 was the biggest threat to democracy ever. And then, independents, 51% to 44%. So the marks are overwhelming here. And I think that also shows you that the mainstream media has lost their engine of hoax building. It literally was shattered on November 5th. And Twitter became what everybody's talking about. Right now, it's about the California fires and Democrat mismanagement. Kind of sucks for the Democrats.
I think you're right. Mark Mitchell, top pollster of Rasmussen Reports. We appreciate you joining us here in One American News as we head into Inauguration Weekend. So we appreciate it.
Happy to be here. It's going to be an interesting year.
Michiganders elected both me and Donald Trump twice, just 2 years apart. Every one of us swore an oath to the people we serve. And the people expect us to find common ground.
Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer does an about-face on resisting President Donald Trump's administration. Speaking to the Detroit Auto Show today, the Democrat urged her own fellow party members to find compromises with Republicans to get positive things done for Michiganders. She said that she has a job to get done and will always seek collaboration before obstruction.
But I will always seek collaboration first. I won't go looking for fights. I won't back down from them either, because I'm not here to play games. I've got a job to do.
The governor's statement comes after President Donald Trump managed to win the Wolverine state by nearly 1.5 points in November. And Governor Ron DeSantis vows to follow Donald Trump's lead to arrest and deport illegal migrants. One America's Nathaniel Manor has more.
We in Florida have a sense of urgency to accomplish this mission. And the mission is very simple. We need to end the illegal immigration crisis once and for all in these United States of America.
With just a few days left until Donald Trump comes back into office, red states are already working to deport the millions of illegal aliens that came here under the Biden-Harris administration. On Wednesday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis laid out his plan to work with Trump to carry out the largest mass deportation in American history. DeSantis said if state and local governments refuse to help out, then the policy will fall flat.
What's happened is Florida's economy has continued to grow. We've seen a huge reduction in taxpayer expenses at things like our emergency rooms. because you have far fewer illegals that are going in to get free medical care. You've also seen illegals leave the state of Florida, not in sufficient numbers because the feds have worked opposite us, but you have seen that.
DeSantis also called a special session of the state legislature to prepare for mass deportations. His plan requires all state and local officials work with him to identify and remove illegal aliens, appoint special authorities to oversee the deportation process, and suspend any officials who try to create a sanctuary city in the Sunshine State. This would also expand the unauthorized alien transport program to detain and deport illegals in Florida and broaden the definition of gang-related crime.
You can't just say, like, if someone's here illegally, wait till they commit like a serious felony before you deport them. If you have gangs, like the Venezuelan gangs are running roughshod around the country, we have some in Florida too, you should just be able to identify them. They're here illegally. Get them, turn them over to ICE, and send them back to their home country where they belong.
DeSantis' plan also includes a prohibition on bail for illegals detained by authorities over concerns they may try to flee the law once let out of jail. Additionally, the plan prevents illegals from receiving in-state tuition rates and increases the punishment for committing voter fraud. Meantime, the special session is set to begin on January 27th. Nathaniel Manor, One America News.
The Pentagon Inspector General blasts Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin's handling of his hospitalization last year. In a nearly 190-page report released today, IG investigators said Austin unnecessarily increased the risks to America's national defense. They assert Austin did not correctly transfer his power when he underwent medical procedures for prostate cancer, despite the Pentagon claiming he did. They add Austin's disappearance caused confusion over the command structure of the Pentagon during that time. The IG's office admits there was no significant consequence from the scandal, but urges the DoD to implement better protocols to prevent confusion and bolster preparedness in the future. And a new report reveals that the Department of Defense spent more in September 2024 than it had in any month over the last 15 years. One America's Daniel Baldwin has that report.
The Department of Defense broke yet another milestone, not necessarily a good one at that either, spending nearly $80 billion on contracts and grants in September of 2024. This is more than any other month since 2008 during the time of the Iraq War. But perhaps more troubling is that OpenTheBooks.com reports the DoD burned through more than $33 billion in the last 5 working days of that same month in September. Here are some examples. $6.1 million on raw lobster tail, $5.1 million on Apple products, and $211 million on new furniture and installing that new furniture. John Hart, CEO of OpenTheBooks.com, is with us to break down these new, certainly damning numbers. John, we appreciate you being with us. The Pentagon has failed 7 consecutive audits. How do you justify this, what appears to be excessive, frivolous spending at that, considering its auditing issues?
Yeah, that's right. Thanks for having me on. Look, I think what happens within the Pentagon and a lot of federal agencies is there's this use it or lose it rule where they feel like they have to spend everything in their account at the end of the year. Otherwise, they're worried that Congress will cut their budget the next year. So in the real world, a normal person would just spend less and ask for less the next year, or they would redirect that money into something that was more useful. And just to put this in perspective, that $79 billion the Pentagon blew in September, the last month of the year, that's bigger than the annual defense budget of some of our closest allies, like the UK, which is $75 billion, Germany is $67 billion. Israel is about $27 billion. So when you think of it, think of what Israel has accomplished from a military perspective over the past year. We spent 3 times the amount of Israel in just the month of September, and more the last 5 days, that 33 billion number you cited. So we're blowing through an astonishing amount of money, and this is so dangerous and concerning because put yourself in the shoes of Xi Jinping in China. If he's thinking, gosh, I'm going to invade Taiwan, but now that the Pentagon has spent $200 million on new furniture and $6 million on lobster tail and 16 on ribeyes, maybe I won't invade Taiwan. I mean, give me a break. What is the deterrent value of new furniture? Are we going to put barriers on the beaches of Taiwan to prevent China from landing? And it undermines our national security for the Pentagon to blow through money like this. And so the taxpayers are rightly outraged, and we need a change in how we do spending in this country.
John, would you label this mismanagement, a reflection of inflation? What is the root cause of this? How does it actually affect the efficacy and the efficiency of the United States military?
Well, the second question is easy to answer. Is every dollar we spend on lobster tail or new furniture is a dollar we can't spend on deterring enemies and advancing our warfighting capability. So there's a very profound and dangerous opportunity cost for all of this wasteful spending. And the reason it exists is both its inertia, is that our federal agencies really for decades have just been complacent, and we've built this administrative state, this managerial class.
John, we heard a couple of United States senators and even Secretary of Defense nominee Pete Hegseth talk about this in Tuesday's Senate confirmation hearing, talking about cutting wasteful spending from the Department of Defense, the Pentagon. You guys analyze this, you research this, you look at this, you crunch the numbers better than anyone on this. What would be a good starting point from your estimation? If Mr. Hegseth can get confirmed, where would you recommend that he start?
Well, what I would do is I would advise him, number one, is to get rid of the use it or lose it rule, because it's stupid, because we're blowing through. Again, $79 billion is a huge expenditure. Again, it's more than what most of our allies spend on defense the entire year. And that sends a signal of weakness and complacency that invites aggression. So it's a very dangerous practice. So number one, get rid of that use it or lose it rule. But also, I would advise him to do a top-down review of all Pentagon contracting and get rid of these non-competitive contract bids and force companies to compete. And rather than go through, Boeing or some defense contractor to buy screws or buy basic supplies, go shop at Home Depot and get it for a tenth the price if you need to do that. And just be smart and be nimble and be creative and spend the money as if it was being spent out of your own pocket. And that's the way we're going to do this. And again, I think with defense is tricky because I think we're probably under investing in a lot of hard military assets that we need to deter aggressors. But again, every dollar we waste on ribeyes and lobster tail, as delicious as they may be, deliciousness is not a deterrent in foreign policy. And that's the lesson that the next defense secretary can certainly take and impose on the rest of the bureaucracy.
It certainly is. John Hart, we appreciate you joining us on One American News, breaking down this new report from openthebooks.com. We appreciate you joining us, sir.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Republican Representative Russ Fulcher reintroduces legislation seeking to eliminate taxes on overtime pay. Fulcher introduced the Keep Every Extra Penny Act today, which seeks to fulfill one of President Trump's campaign promises. He said Americans who choose to work overtime should get to keep more of their hard-earned money, adding cutting overtime taxes will help Americans hurting from inflation. This is the second time the Republican has introduced the legislation after seeking a vote on it in July that never occurred. Former campaign manager for Bernie Sanders' 2020 presidential race, Faiz Shakir, announces his candidacy for DNC chair. According to the New York Times today, Shakir threw his hat into the ring because he's upset over the lack of vision within the Democrat Party. He said the Democrats have to focus on winning back working-class Americans if they want to win big in 2028. Shakir now faces off against former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, Minnesota DFL Chair Ken Martin, and Wisconsin Democrat Party Chair Ben Wickler. The DNC election is expected to be held on February 1st. And still to come on One American News, the FDA is amending its color additive regulations finally, when we can expect to see the changes. Plus, over a dozen state attorneys general urge a large retailer to reconsider DEI policy rollbacks. We'll have more after the break. reconsider rolling back its DEI policies. In a letter sent to CEO Doug McMillon, the attorneys general questioned the company's decision, writing the changes will be bad for business and Walmart's customer base. They add the decision risks undermining, quote, important social progress and anti-discrimination efforts, and urge the retailer to consider the decision. And the Consumer Price Index report for December is out, showing annual inflation rising to 2.9%. Lisa Bernard has more.
U.S. inflation data out Wednesday showed consumer prices ticked up more than expected in December amid higher gas prices. The Labor Department's Consumer Price Index rose 0.4% last month, slightly more than economists polled by Reuters had expected, putting the annual inflation rate at 2.9%. But the so-called core CPI, which excludes volatile food and energy costs, was 3.2%, down from the month before and better than the forecast. That helped lift the stock market on Wednesday. Traders were pricing in nearly even odds that the Federal Reserve will cut interest rates twice by the end of 2025, with the first reduction to come in June. No rate cut is expected at the Fed's January policy meeting. Last year, the central bank forecast 4 rate cuts for 2025, but later scaled back that prediction to 2. Fed policymakers see some of the proposed policies of President-elect Donald Trump as inflationary, such as broad tariffs on imported goods and mass deportations of undocumented immigrants.
Scientists study the brain waves of mice through tiny VR headsets. Alice Rizzo has a report.
Scientists are using tiny VR headsets to explore how mice brains handle memory and navigation. By allowing the mice to navigate obstacles and potential threats while monitoring their brain activity, researchers at New York's Cornell University hope to uncover insights into disorders like Alzheimer's.
I think every neuroscientist that I've talked to about this, as soon as they hear VR headset for mice, they immediately get it. I wasn't really sure how it was going to be received, VR headset for mice. I figured more people would wonder, what's the point of something like this?
Dr. Matthew Isaacson is the study's co-lead author and a postdoctoral researcher. He came up with the idea of designing a mouse-sized immersive VR setup while studying a treatment for Alzheimer's that increases blood flow in tiny brain capillaries, a treatment that has been shown to improve memory function in mice.
In order to study what this treatment is doing, we need to use a very powerful microscope and head fix Alzheimer's disease mouse underneath the microscope and then put it in a situation where it can navigate an environment so that we can assess its spatial learning and memory. This is where the trick of VR comes in, where even though an animal is head fixed, it can still navigate a virtual environment.
This setup lets researchers image and learn from the mouse's neural activity patterns.
It is very useful that they are tricked, and then we can do a lot of interesting experiments.
The team plans to further develop the goggles, working on a lightweight and mobile version for larger rodents.
2 moon landers, one from the U.S., the other from Japan, begin their journeys into space. Diane 2 has more on the global race to the moon.
3, 2, 1. Ignition.
SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket blasted off from Florida on Wednesday, sending 2 commercial moon landers into space. It's an unusual double moonshot launch that highlights the global rush to explore the lunar surface. One lander is the Resilience, made by Japanese company iSpace. It's iSpace's second attempt at a moon landing after a first try in 2023 failed due to an altitude miscalculation. The other lander, named Blue Ghost, is the first by Texas-based Firefly Aerospace. Firefly is now the 3rd company to launch a moon lander under NASA's public-private commercial lunar payload services program. Countries and private companies worldwide have been aiming for the moon in recent years. They have an eye on its potential to host astronaut bases, as well as possible resources that could be mined for in-space applications. It's turning Earth's natural satellite into a stage for national prestige and geopolitical competition, with echoes of the Cold War-era space race. According to an iSpace executive, Resilience is carrying $16 million worth of custom missions and 6 payloads in total, including an in-house micro-rover that will collect lunar samples. The lander is expected to touch down on the moon's surface around May to June after taking an energy-efficient route. Firefly's Blue Ghost aims to reach the moon 45 days after launch, around March the 2nd. It's carrying 11 payloads from a range of customers, most of them funded by NASA. The U.S. Space Agency has a goal to send humans back to the moon for the first time since 1972 by 2027, though that will likely be pushed back. While China plans to put its own crews on the lunar surface by 2030, following a series of robotic missions. NASA's move to fund public-private missions like Firefly's Blue Ghost is aimed at studying the moon's surface and stimulating private lunar demand before the agency sends humans there through its Artemis program. But it faces potential changes with the incoming administration of Donald Trump. The president-elect has largely sided with SpaceX CEO Elon Musk's vision to focus heavily on Mars.
Despite this chemical being banned in cosmetics and beauty products since 1990, red number 3 is officially banned in food in the U.S. Today, the FDA said the food dye known to be linked to cancer will effectively be removed from food and oral medications. This is in response to a 2022 petition that cites the Delaney Clause, which is part of the color additives amendment that prohibits FDA authorization of a food or color additive if it has been found to induce cancer in human or animals. Companies who use red number 3 in food will have until January 15th, 2027, and ingested drugs by January 18th, 2028 to reformulate these products. All right, big win for us in the food and drug industry.
Great story to end on. It's a good conversation keeper right there.
I agree.
All right, have a wonderful day. Bye. Coming up on One American News, President-elect Trump weighing in on the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas, why he says this is only the beginning for great things to come in the U.S. And Ron DeSantis ramping up his efforts to protect Floridians against illegal migrants, how he's trying to help Trump carry out mass deportations. And later we'll bring you updates from Southern California, where crews are still fighting those wildfires. The latest on the containment. Those stories and more right now on One American News. Watching, I'm Mike Deneau. President-elect Trump weighing in on the ceasefire agreement between Israel and Hamas. On Truth Social Wednesday, Trump attributed the deal to the presidential election, saying it signaled to the entire world that his administration would seek peace and negotiate deals to ensure the safety of all Americans and U.S. allies. The president-elect assured the National Security Council will continue to work closely with Israel and allies to ensure Gaza never becomes a terrorist safe haven again. Trump also emphasized his incoming administration will promote peace through strength throughout the region, as this is only the beginning of great things to come in America. One America's Nathaniel Manor has more.
After 15 months of fighting between Hamas terrorists and the State of Israel, both sides have agreed to a ceasefire and hostage deal. Joe Biden addressed the nation in one of his final speeches, praising himself for getting a hostage deal through that he first pushed for back in March. The plan involves 3 phases.
Phase 1 will last 6 weeks. It includes a full and complete ceasefire, withdrawal of Israeli forces from all the populated areas of Gaza, and the release of a number of hostages held by Hamas, including women and elderly and the wounded.
However, Biden failed to mention that in exchange for women and elderly hostages being freed, Israel would have to release 30 Palestinian prisoners for every one hostage let go, and 50 Palestinian prisoners for every female Israeli soldier freed. From there, Israel would move on to Phase 2, which would free the remaining male hostages for even more Palestinian prisoners and a full withdrawal of Israeli troops from Gaza.
The Palestinian people have gone through hell. Too many innocent people have died. Too many communities have been destroyed. In this deal, the people of Gaza can finally recover and rebuild. They can look to a future without Hamas in power.
After another 6 weeks, they would move on to Phase 3, where Hamas would return the bodies of the deceased hostages. This would also begin the process of rebuilding the Gaza Strip. Hamas terrorists murdered 1,200 innocent Israeli civilians and took roughly 250 people captive on October 7th. And though Biden acknowledged the suffering of the Israelis, he also claimed that there were atrocities on both sides.
This deal was developed and negotiated under my administration, but its terms will be implemented, for the most part, by the next administration. In these past few days, we've been speaking as one team. This has been a time of real turmoil in the Middle East. But as I prepare to leave office, our friends are strong, our enemies are weak, and there's a genuine opportunities for a new future.
Biden hopes that this deal will pave a path for a Palestinian state, but a recent survey from the Palestinian Center for Policy and Survey Research found that 2/3 of Palestinians want to continue fighting the Jewish state. Additionally, 80% polled said they supported the initial attack on October 7th because it got them media attention. It's now up to Donald Trump's administration to see whether he will enforce the existing deal or draw up his own peace plan to safeguard Israel.
This deal was developed and negotiated under my administration, but its terms will be implemented, for the most part, by the next administration. In these past few days, we've been speaking as one team. This has been a time of real turmoil in the Middle East. But as I prepare to leave office, our friends are strong, our enemies are weak, and there's a genuine opportunities for a new future.
Trump said the ceasefire deal would not have gone through had he not been elected in 2024, and even the media acknowledged this claim.
Who gets credit for this, Mr. President, you or Trump?
Is that a joke? Oh, thank you.
Trump said his administration will continue to work with Israel to make sure that Gaza will never again attack our ally in the Middle East. Nathaniel Manor, One American News.
The agency must provide the president and U.S. policymakers with the best possible intelligence to inform their decision-making in hopes of preserving peace and spreading prosperity.
And CIA Director nominee John Ratcliffe says his top priority is to maintain peace in America and on the world stage. During his confirmation hearing today, Ratcliffe said that he will ensure the CIA will keep tabs on Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea to prevent them from threatening the U.S. However, Ratcliffe said his agency will not target American citizens if confirmed.
As Director of National Intelligence, I had the privilege of working closely with President Trump and oversaw the 18 agencies of the U.S. intelligence community, including the agency I now have the honor of being nominated to lead. In each of these roles, I served with fidelity to the Constitution and a strict adherence to the rule of law, and I have always prioritized American civil liberties, something I will continue to do if confirmed to serve again.
And the Intelligence Committee is asking members and Ratcliffe to send additional documents and questions before the panel votes to advance Ratcliffe's confirmation to the full Senate. All right, Trump's choice to lead the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, takes the hot seat on Capitol Hill to explain her qualifications for Attorney General. Here's One America's Chloe Hawkswell.
Day 1 of 2 for Trump's Attorney General nominee Pam Bondi on Capitol Hill Wednesday as she makes her case to the Senate Judiciary.
If confirmed as the next Attorney General of the United States, my overriding objective will be to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of keeping Americans safe and vigorously prosecuting criminals.
In her opening statements, Bondi expressed her desire to get the DOJ back to basics, focusing on reducing violent crime, cartel and terrorist activity, and more. Many of the senators wanted reassurance, asking Bondi multiple hypothetical questions to gauge what she would do as AG.
It would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country.
She is the second Trump nominee who is vowing a return to form, a restoration of the institution to restore public trust. Democrat senators are accusing Bondi of associating with extremists and not being able to stand up to Trump. But she did a pretty decent job showing off her skills of standing her ground.
So you would need a factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
Not a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
And not a summary by the president either, right?
Absolutely.
So a summary by the president or his desire to investigate Jack Smith would not be enough for you to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
I will look at the facts and evidence in any case. And sitting here today, Senator, 72% of Americans have lost faith in the Department of Justice.
Sitting here today, are you?
Bondi will return for round 2 of questioning on Capitol Hill Thursday. Chloe Hawkswell, One America News.
Michiganders elected both me and Donald Trump twice, just 2 years apart. Every one of us swore an oath to the people we serve, and the people expect us to find common ground.
Michigan Governor Whitmer does an about-face on resisting President Trump's administration. Speaking to the Detroit Auto Show on Wednesday, the Democrat urging her own fellow party members to find compromise within the Republicans to give positive things and get them done for Michigan residents. She said that she has a job to get done.
But I will always seek collaboration first. I won't go looking for fights. I won't back down from them either, because I'm not here to play games. I've got a job to do.
The governor's statement comes after President Trump managed to win the Wolverine state by nearly 1.5 points in November. And Governor DeSantis vowing to follow Donald Trump's lead to arrest and deport illegal migrants. Here's One America's Nathaniel Manor.
We in Florida have a sense of urgency to accomplish this mission. And the mission is very simple. We need to end the illegal immigration crisis once and for all in these United States of America.
With just a few days left until Donald Trump comes back into office, red states are already working to deport the millions of illegal aliens that came here under the Biden-Harris administration. On Wednesday, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis laid out his plan to work with Trump to carry out the largest mass deportation in American history. DeSantis said if state and local governments refuse to help out, then the policy will fall flat.
What's happened is Florida's economy has continued to grow. We've seen a huge reduction in taxpayer expenses at things like our emergency rooms because you have far fewer illegals that are going in to get free medical care. You've also seen illegals leave the state of Florida, not in sufficient numbers because the feds have worked opposite us, but you have seen that.
DeSantis also called a special session of the state legislature to prepare for mass deportations. His plan requires all state and local officials work with him to identify and remove illegal aliens, appoint special authorities to oversee the deportation process, and suspend any officials who try to create a sanctuary city in the Sunshine State. This would also expand the unauthorized alien transport program to detain and deport illegals in Florida and broaden the definition of gang-related crime.
You can't just say, like, if someone's here illegally, wait till they commit like a serious felony before you deport them. If you have gangs, like the Venezuelan gangs are running roughshod around the country, we have some in Florida too, you should just be able to identify them. They're here illegally. get them, turn them over to ICE, and send them back to their home country where they belong.
DeSantis' plan also includes a prohibition on bail for illegals detained by authorities over concerns they may try to flee the law once let out of jail. Additionally, the plan prevents illegals from receiving in-state tuition rates and increases the punishment for committing voter fraud. Meantime, the special session is set to begin on January 27th. Nathaniel Manor, One America News.
And Donald Trump is reportedly considering an executive order to suspend the TikTok ban. That's according to the Washington Post on Wednesday, citing two sources familiar with the deliberations. Sources say Trump and his team have been discussing ways to save the day for TikTok, including a potential executive order to stay the ban for 60 to 90 days. The popular short-form content app faces a total U.S. shutdown by Sunday if the app's owner, ByteDance, does not sell the app and the Supreme Court declines to overturn that ban. All right, straight ahead, manhunt for a suspect who shot a sheriff's deputy in Houston has come to an end. How that suspect was caught. And welcome back. Manhunt has come to an end after a suspect is shot dead by authorities in Houston, Texas. 56-year-old Robert Lee Davis was killed by police in a shootout Wednesday. KTRK local news reporting a canine also shot and airlifted to an animal hospital. Davis was on the run after fatally shooting Deputy Jesus Vargasa at a Dollar Tree as the deputy was trying to serve him a warrant. Vargas was a 17-year vet of the Brazoria County Sheriff's Department. He is survived by his wife and 3 children. And the National Weather Service extending a red flag warning for some areas north of LA County. The NWS extended the warning through Thursday. High winds bring a new threat to that situation as firefighters continue to battle 3 major wildfires, which have burned more than 38,000 acres altogether. Palisades and Eaton Fire, 19% and 45% contained. The Hearst Fire is 97% contained. At least 25 people have been killed, and teams continue searching for more than 30 people who are missing. Here's One America's Taylor Tinsley.
As the wildfires in Los Angeles County continue, so does the looting and arson. The LAPD discussed 2 notable arrests made just outside of the fire zone on Tuesday. An arson suspect was arrested after admitting he started a fire because he liked the smell of burning leaves. Hours later, a woman was arrested for setting multiple piles of trash on fire, telling police she enjoyed causing chaos and destruction. 2 people have also been arrested for impersonating firefighters. The LA County District Attorney railed against people who see the disaster as an opportunity to price gouge, like increasing rooms they're renting or houses they're leasing.
The price gouging is particularly despicable because these are people who are basically looking at this situation and saying, how can I make the most amount of money from people who are desperately seeking housing, supplies. They're seeking services because they've lost everything.
Lori Lopez's Altadena home was among those lost in the destruction.
I never expected this. Being where we're located, you think the ocean, you don't think this is going to happen. I think it's a nightmare. I think, when am I going to wake up?
The fire has also displaced some 7,000 students across the school district. The teachers union said it's identified 148 employees who lost their homes, with more than 500 displaced. The LA Schools superintendent said they'll be providing 5 days off for affected employees. In the meantime, more than 82,000 remain under evacuation orders, with over 90,000 under evacuation warnings. A 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. curfew remains in effect for the impacted areas. Taylor Tinsley, One America News.
And California is taking steps to roll back their request to the EPA to approve a ban on the sale of use of diesel trucks and train engines. According to the California Air Resources Board Tuesday, officials withdrew their request for federal approval, citing attempts from Trump's first administration to thwart various so-called climate efforts. While such requests have yet to be approved, Air Resources Board Chair Leanne Randolph said the EPA is considering options to address emission concerns. Now, this comes as Trump spokesperson Caroline Leavitt said Trump plans to work on improving both air and water quality during his second term. All right, SpaceX has filed a federal suit against the California Coastal Commission with Elon Musk company alleging discrimination over political beliefs. According to court filings released Wednesday, SpaceX is alleging the commission acted with bias in an October meeting when they denied expanding the rocket launch schedule. Members on the commission reportedly discussed how they viewed Musk's support of President Trump very negatively. Federal lawmakers from California have introduced legislation to strip the commission of certain powers to prevent similar situations like this in the future. And Virginia's Democrat-led House of Delegates passes resolutions concerning voting access, marriage equality, and abortion access. Here's One America's McKenna Blackman.
The Virginia House of Delegates passes resolutions that seek to protect abortion access, restore the vote to convicted felons, and enshrine marriage equality as Democrats look to amend the state constitution by 2026. The Democrat-led House advanced 3 proposed constitutional amendments on Tuesday, along with sister measures which are now making their way through the state Senate. If the proposed abortion measure is successful, Virginia will go on to join a number of states that are looking to put access to the procedure on the ballot. State Delegate Mark Early Jr. described the measure as extreme, even compared to elsewhere in the country.
This is among the most extreme and ideologically driven constitutional amendments among any that have been proposed in the nation.
Additionally, state lawmakers also voted 55-44 to make changes to the state's process in restoring voting rights for those who serve time in prison for felony crimes. This comes after Governor Glenn Youngkin rolled back the process, making Virginia the only state that permanently banned convicted felons from voting until such rights are restored to the person by the governor.
The right to vote is fundamental, and the amendment ensures that if a person has served their time, they deserve to have their right to participate in democracy restored.
Meantime, Virginia's marriage equality resolution garnered the most bipartisan support after lawmakers voted 58-35. While proposed constitutional amendments are not subject to veto by the governor, they must pass twice within 2 years before being voted upon by the public. McKenna Blackman, One American News.
And prosecutors say they are in talks about a potential plea deal with alleged Mexican cartel kingpin Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Zambada appeared in court on Wednesday and waived any conflict of interest that could stem from that. Prosecutors believe the younger Zambada could testify against his father if he went to trial on drug trafficking charges. His son previously testified against Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, who allegedly co-founded the Sinaloa cartel with El Mayo. According to a U.S. attorney, the plea talks with Zambada have not borne fruit so far, but prosecutors would like to keep trying. A judge has scheduled a hearing for an update on April 22nd. All right, New Jersey Governor Murphy promising to stockpile abortion pills in that state as President-elect Trump is set to take over in Washington, D.C. During his State of the State address in Trenton on Tuesday, the Democrat said that reproductive rights are under attack nationwide and New Jersey needs to be a safe haven. He also said that with pro-life Republicans taking over Congress's majorities, Garden Staters need to have their so-called rights protected.
Additionally, and in light of the anti-choice policies supported by the current majorities in Congress, today I am also announcing that New Jersey will begin stockpiling a supply of mifepristone so every woman can access this crucial form of reproductive care.
And Governor Murphy has said that he will work with Trump on issues where they align, but he must protect his residents where they don't. And straight ahead, Florida Democrats claim Joe Biden is trying to... And welcome back. Danish Prime Minister says it's up to Greenland if they want to join America. He spoke with Trump on Wednesday, saying he will have to negotiate directly with Greenland if he wants to annex the island or if they want to be an independent country. This comes as Greenland's leader said that his island's independence is not up for sale. However, this has not deterred Trump from threatening to use military forces to take over Greenland. All right, Congressman Jared Moskowitz is slamming Joe Biden for removing Cuba from the list of state sponsors of terrorism. According to Axios Wednesday, Moskowitz said Biden permanently surrendered Florida to Republicans, saying this makes it harder for Democrats to flip the Sunshine State. Florida has a large Hispanic population and opposes Cuba's regime, as most of them fled from Cuba, Venezuela, Colombia, or Nicaragua. Meantime, Florida Democrat Party Chair Nikki Fried voiced her frustration with Biden, saying Cuba's treatment of their citizens is one of the biggest human rights violation over the past century. And reports confirmed Wednesday that negotiators reached a phased ceasefire deal to end the war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas and to release the hostages. Chief White House correspondent Daniel Baldwin has more.
President-elect Donald Trump called the ceasefire deal announced in Gaza epic on Truth Social, claiming that it could have only happened as a result of his historic victory in November. However, President Joe Biden stepped forward holding a press conference on the deal, taking credit for it, saying this is something that he's been talking about for a significant period of time. This is a phased ceasefire deal, meaning that multiple different things will happen over time. But the bottom line is that reports say the hostages will be coming home. Joining us now to break everything down is Middle East expert and editor-in-chief at the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. Lisa, what do we need to know about this specific deal, and do you think it will ultimately be a good thing?
It's difficult. This is a very complex deal. A complex situation, right? We know this. We're dealing with Israel, a sovereign nation that is trying to survive as a democracy in the Middle East, surrounded by terror organizations that want to see it off the map, all puppeteered by the Islamic Republic, the regime in Iran that seems to have endless funds to put into its terror sprees, and has been, since October 7th, severely decimated in those groups. So Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and of course, with Trump coming into the White House, Iran's regime knows that its days are numbered in terms of the oil it will be able to sell, the weapons it will be able to sell. So there's a lot of things to unpack here, but ultimately, is this a good deal or a bad deal? It shows us the daily dilemma that Israel has to put up with in terms of valuing life over death. And that's exactly the difference that we see between Israel and its enemies. There is an adage that the Jewish people use, and it goes something like, he who saves one life is as if he saved the world. And that is exactly what the nation of Israel is going through right now. 33 civilians in exchange for, and I know that there are soldiers that are hostages as well, mainly civilians. And there are even Americans who are being held hostage right now in exchange for terrorists, people who have been known to commit terror. And if released, will they go back to creating more October 7th and being masterminds of more terror attacks? So really, that's the question here that Israel has to grapple with.
Well, that's a big question. There's been sorely some posturing from both the Biden camp and the Trump camp about who deserves credit for this. Right. Obviously, the president-elect will be back in office in just a few days. He's been very clear with his rhetoric, saying that if the hostages were not set free and sent home by his inauguration day, all hell would break loose. Right. Do you think this rhetoric played a role in the ceasefire deal and this hostage negotiations coming to fruition just days before his inauguration?
Yeah, it would be hard to separate the two because what he has done is effectively created deterrence where there was none. He, from the podium, that's exactly what we talk about. When we talk about using deterrence as a foreign policy tool, it doesn't start when you catch the Houthi missile, intercept it. The deterrence is not allowing the Houthis to take that first shot. And that is exactly what Donald Trump is trying to create coming into office. This is very reminiscent, and I know many people have talked about this, of the Carter-Reagan moments of getting the hostages released from Iran 45 years ago. And now you're seeing it once again unfold, where the first phase of this, the first hostages to be released, are going to be literally on the eve of the inauguration on Sunday, where the inauguration is on Monday. So I think a lot of that can be credited to Donald Trump. I mean, why is it that we are here on the 1 yard line of the Biden administration's 4 years, where they want to come to the podium and give this briefing on how amazing they were? Look, I don't deny the fact that this was complex. I don't deny the fact that it took a lot of time. But I also I do believe that the deterrence, that the posturing, that the incoming Trump administration has shown time and again, with no daylight in between, there is no way to mince the words of the incoming president. He sent his envoy, who is now in Qatar, who was present at the briefing from the Qatari officials. He's there. He's showing a very strong position from the United States, and they didn't even come into office yet. So all of this does play a hand.
Lisa Daftari, we appreciate you joining us here on One American News, breaking everything down. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
And Iran's president says that his country has never intended to assassinate Donald Trump. During a recent interview, Mossad Pezeshkian denied that his country has ever plotted an assassination against Trump. He claimed Iran has never been for assassinations and terrorism.
Iran has never been in pursuit of assassination and acts of terror.
You're saying there was never an Iranian plot to kill Donald Trump?
Never, by no means.
Are you willing to promise that there will be no attempt on the life of Donald Trump?
Ever since the beginning, we never intended to do that.
This comes after the U.S. Department of Justice filed charges against the Iranian national for threatening to murder Trump, while in 2021, the Iranian government was threatening the president and his former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. And the Iranian government has given direct funding to the Hamas and Hezbollah terrorist groups. Okay.